Hello and welcome to lesson 1-6. Now we've been talking about decimals during this topic, and today's lesson is going to focus on rounding decimals. Now, when we're talking about rounding, the same rounding rules apply that we're used to for whole numbers, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Let's go ahead and get on our short video lesson and then jump into our explanation, our notes, and our guided practice as usual.
How can you round decimals? Think about this question during the lesson. Rounding replaces one number with another number that tells about how many or how much. Round 2 36 to the nearest tenth. Is 2 36 closer to 2 3/10 or 2 4/10?
Okay, so here let's talk about rounding. Now, when we are rounding a place value, so here it says to the near, is it closer to 2 3/10 or 2 4/10? So we're looking at that 3, and we need to decide, is it closer, is it going to round down to just be 3, or is it going to round up to be a 4? Now, when we're looking at a place value, first we have to identify the place value that we're going to be rounding. That's our tenths place. And we need to look to the digit that's immediately to the right, so the one that comes right after it. That digit is going to be the one that tells you what to do. Are you staying the same or are you moving up? Now, when we're rounding, remember, if your number is 5 or greater, you're going to round up. If your number is 4 or less, you're going to round down. So 5 or up goes up, anything less than that goes back. So 2 36 hundredths is going to be close to 2 4/10 or 2 40 hundredths. If we want to talk about it, we can add a 0 placeholder there. Just like 36 is going to be closer to 40 than it is to 30.
A number line can help you round a decimal. Where do you put 2 36 on the number line?
Okay, so when we have a number line, just like we had with whole numbers, we're going from 2 3/10 to 2 4/10. So in between those, so you're moving from 2 and 31 hundredths, 2 32 hundredths, 2 33 hundredths, 2 34 hundredths, 35 hundredths, 36, 37, 38, 39, until you get to 2 40 hundredths, which we know is the same thing as saying 2 4/10, because that 0 that would come after has no value. So once you place it on a number line, it's very easy to see the distance. It's a lot shorter to get from the point that you're at, which is a 2 36 hundredths, and move it up to 2.4 or 2 4/10 than it is to move it back to 2 3/10.
Find halfway between 2 3/10 and 2 4/10. Halfway between both numbers is 2 35 hundredths. Since you know 2 36 hundredths is 1/100th more than 2 35 hundredths, 2 36 hundredths comes right after 2 35 hundredths. Two 36 hundredths is closer to 2 4/10, since 2 36 hundredths is more than halfway between 2 3/10 and 2 4/10 on the number line. So 2 36 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth is 2 4/10. Here is another way. Find the rounding place. Look at the digit to the right of the rounding place. What is the digit? In which place is this digit?
So we figured out which number we're rounding, and then we looked the digit to the right. So if we're looking to round the tenths place, we're going to look at the hundredths place. And in the hundredths place, we have a 6. So 6 hundredths. Is that 6 going to help us round up, or is it going to keep us where we're at?
The digit to the right of the rounding place is 6. 6 is in the hundredths place. What is the next step? If the digit is 5 or greater, add 1 to the rounding digit. If the digit is less than 5, leave the rounding digit alone. Since 6 is greater than 5, add 1 to the 3. What step is next? Drop the digits to the right of the rounding digit. So, 2 and 36 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth is what number? 2 and 36 hundredths rounds to 2 and 4 tenths.
Rounding can help you find which tenth or hundredth a decimal is closer to.
All right, now let's go ahead and jump into our notes and our guided practice together. So lesson 1-6, round decimals. How can you round decimals? That's going to be our focus question. Now, rounding decimals works the same way as rounding whole numbers, and it follows the same basic steps. First, you find the place that you want to round. That's your rounding place. Then you're going to look to the place value that's to the right of your rounding place. So here I have the number 477 thousandths. Now the place value I want to round is the hundredth, so I underlined it. Now, in order to decide which way my hundredths is going to go, I need to look at my place value next to it, the place value to the right, which is going to be my thousandths place. That place value is going to tell me which way my number is going to move. Is it going to stay where it's at, or is it going to move up to the next place value or to the next digit in that place value? So in 477 thousandths, I'm looking at the 7 in the hundredths place, and then the 7 in the thousandths place is going to be what's going to help me decide which way to go. Now, because 7 is more than halfway, so right, 5 and up will round up, and then 4 and less will round down. 7 is going to round up. So what you can do at that point is you're going to change your digit in the rounding place, and then you're going to drop all the place values that come after it, or you can zero them out if you want to. But remember, when you zero them out, it's not adding anything. You're not changing the value by putting the zeros there, so you can drop those zeros. You can also draw a number line to help you see where the number is located. Now here we have 47 hundredths or 470 thousandths. You can put that zero placeholder there to help you out. And 48 hundredths or 480 thousandths. Then you're going to find your halfway point. So in between 47 hundredths and 48 hundredths is going to be 475 thousandths. Now, once you found your halfway point, you're going to put the point that you're working on. So the point that you are currently trying to decide which way to move, you're going to plot that point on your number line. You find the location and you put the mark for it. Once you've done that, it's easy to see. If it's past the halfway point, you're going to round up. If it is before the halfway point, then you're going to leave that digit the same. You're not going to change it. So let's take a look at another example. We're going to round 0 and 34 hundredths to the nearest tenth. So the first thing I do is I want to find my tenths place. That's my rounding place because I want to round to the tenths. So I find my tenths and I underlined it. Now we're going to look at the place value to the right. We're going to look at the hundredths place. The hundredths place is going to tell me, is it staying the same or is it going to move up? So the number in my hundredths place is a 4. Now remember, in order for it to round up, it needs to be 5 or more to round up. Anything less than that is going to stay the same. So since there is a 4 in my hundredths place, my 3 is not going to change. My 3 is going to stay at 3, and then we're going to drop all of the digits that come after it. They zero out and we can drop them. So 0 and 34 hundredths is closer to 3/10 or 0 and 3/10 than it is to 0 and 4/10. Let's take a look at another example. We're going to round each number to the place value that's underlined. So I'm not telling you necessarily all of them need to be the tenths place or all of them need to be the hundredths place. Whichever place value is underlined, that's the one we're going to work with. So my first number is 4 and 5/10. So I want to first identify my rounding place. So the rounding place that I see here is the ones place, so the one whole number place, the place value before the decimal. In order to decide which way I'm going to round, I need to look at the place value to the right. So the place value to the right is that 5 that's in the tenths place. Now we know that 5 and up will round up. So what I need to do here is that 4 is going to round up to a 5, and I can zero out and drop everything that comes after it. So 4 and 5/10 is closer to 5. For my second example, I have 0 and 438 thousandths, and I need to round my hundredths place. So my hundredths place number is a 3. And in order to decide which way that 3 is going to go, I need to look at my thousandths place. So the place value immediately to the right. My thousandths place has an 8. So that 8 is going to tell me right away that my 3 is going to round up to a 4. So 438 thousandths is going to be closer to 44 hundredths than it is going to be to 43 hundredths. So remember, we change the place value that we're working with if we're rounding up, and then we drop everything that comes after it. For my third example here, we have 84 and 732 thousandths. For this one, we're going to take a look at the tenths place. Now we realize that there's a 7 in the tenths place, right? It's that first digit after the decimal. And in order to decide what we're going to do with that 7, are we going to leave it alone or are we going to round it up? We're going to look at the hundredths place, which is the place value right after it. Here we can see that in the hundredths place, we have a 3. Now 3 tells us that we're not going to move our number. Our 7 is going to stay the same. So it's going to be 84 and 7/10. So remember, we drop everything that comes after that digit once we decide which way it's going to go. All right. Now, even if there are more digits, remember, if you're rounding, you're going to focus on your rounding place and the place value that comes right after it. You don't worry about all of the other place values there. So if you have place values that are much smaller, you have place values that are bigger, your focus is going to be the rounding place and the digit after it. All right, let's see. Next, we're going to get into our guided practice. Now, for our guided practice, the first question says, to round 74 and 58 hundredths to the nearest tenth, what digit do you look at? And then what is 74 and 58 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth? So if I'm rounding the tenths place, I need to look at the digit to the right, which is the hundredths place. And 74 and 58 hundredths will round to 74 and 6/10. For number 2, it says a car rental service charges customers for the number of miles they travel, rounded to the nearest whole number. George travels 40.8 miles, or 40 and 8/10 of a mile. For how many miles will he be charged? Explain. So 40 and 8/10, we need to round this to the nearest whole mile. So we're going to look at the ones place. That's going to be our rounding spot. And then to decide which way we're going to round, we're going to look at the first decimal, the first space after the decimal, which is our tenths place. So in order to decide what we're going to do with that 0 in the ones place, we're going to look at the 8. Now the 8 tells us that we're going to round up. So 40 and 8/10 of a mile is going to round up to 41 miles. He's going to be charged for 41 miles. All right, for numbers 3 all the way through number 10, they're going to give you a digit and they're going to ask you which way is it going to round. So for number 3, your number is 16 and 5/10 or 16.5. You need to decide, is the 6 in the ones place, is that going to stay the same or is it going to round up? Now, in order to decide which way it's going to round, we're going to look at the next place value. So we'll look at the 10ths place, which is the digit that comes right after the 6. The digit right there is going to be a 5. Now, a 5 tells me that I'm going to round up. So that 5 in the 10ths place will round the 6 in the ones place up to a 7. So 16 and 5/10 is going to round to 17. For number 4, we're also looking at the ones place and deciding which way it's going to round. In order to decide that, we're going to look at the 10ths place, which is the place value right after it. Now, the number that's in the 10ths place is a 1. So that 1 is going to tell us that we're leaving the 6 alone. The 6 is going to stay the same. So 56 and 1/10 is going to round down to just 56. Next, we have number 5, 1 and 32 hundredths. And the place value that we're looking to round is the 10ths place. So the number that's in the 10ths place is a 3. In order to decide which way it's going to go, we need to look at the place value next to it, which is the hundredths place. Now that 2 in the hundredths place tells us that the 3 is going to stay the same. So 1 and 32 hundredths is going to round down to 1 and 3/10. Next, we have number 6. We have 42 and 78 hundredths, and we want to round the 10ths place. So the digit in the 10ths place is a 7. We're going to look at the one that comes right after it, which is the 8 in the hundredths place. Now, the 8 in the hundredths place tells us right away that it's going to round up. So 42 and 78 hundredths is going to round up to 42 and 8/10. For number 7, we have 1 and 652 thousandths. Now the the digit that we're working with is going to be the hundredths place, which is the 5. Now, in order to decide which way that 5 is going to move, we need to look at the thousandths place, which is the place value that comes right after it. In that thousandths place, we see that there is a 2. Now, a 2 tells us right away, the 2 in the thousandths place tells us that that 5 is not going to change. It's going to stay the same. So your 1 and 652 thousandths is going to round down to 1 and 65 hundredths. For number 8, we have 582 and 4 hundredths, and we need to decide based on the 10ths place, which way is it going to round? So our rounding place is the 10ths place. We're going to look at the hundredths place to decide. That 4 in the hundredths place is going to tell us which way that 0 is going to move. Is it going to stay a 0 or is it going to round up? Now, because there is a 4 in the hundredths place, that tells us that the 0 is going to stay the same. So in order for it to round up, it would have needed to be a 5 or greater. All right, number 9, we have 80,547 and 645 thousandths. So notice there's a lot of digits in these ones, but the digits, like I told you, that you need to focus on are your rounding place and the number immediately after it. The rest of them, almost all the time, will stay exactly the same. So here, the digit we need to focus on, our rounding place, is the hundredths place. That's the 4. And the digit that comes immediately after it is the thousandths place, and that's a 5. So those are the two numbers we're focused on, the 4 and the 5. The rest of them are going to stay the same right now. We're not touching them, so we're going to leave those alone. Now that 5 is going to tell me that my 4 in my hundredths place is going to round up. So 80,547 and 645 thousandths is going to become 80,547 and 65 hundredths. So that 64 that we were looking at became a 65. And for number 10, again, we have a lot of digits here. Don't panic about lots of digits. Focus on your rounding place and the place value immediately after it. That's where your focus needs to be. So here we have 135,701 and 949 thousandths. And we need to decide if that tenths place is going to change. So our rounding place is the 9, and the place value after it, the hundredths place, is the one that's going to decide for us, is it staying the same or is it moving up? So the hundredths place has a 4 in it. That 4 in the hundredths place tells us that that 9 is going to stay the same. It's not going to change. So 135,701 and 949 thousandths is going to round down to 135,701 and 9 tenths. So that 9 stayed the same. Everything that came after it got dropped. That's all you have to do for these questions. So remember, don't get scared or confused when you see a lot of digits. Your focus is on your rounding place and the place value immediately after it. And almost always, all the other digits are going to stay exactly the same. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.